Stakefish, F2 Pool. So F2 Pool is a big Bitcoin mining pool that you might have heard of. It's the third biggest. Their sister company, it shares a co-founder. It's the founder of Stakefish. It's a validator on Ethereum and other chains. This is just kind of a big piece of drama that I had to put up at midnight last night, Eastern time, where they had to cut 25% of their employees. They're citing, the bear market generally, but there's just some like crazy little tidbits in this story. First off, they gave people like 2 days notice, and those 2 days notice came 2 days before the Ethereum merge. So as most of us know at this point, the Ethereum merge shifted the operation of Ethereum from miners to validators. This is one of the largest validators. And then on the day of the merge, people were cut 25% from this company. They worked for years and then they're gone. I don't know. There's a ton in here. I recommend reading it. There's also, I think this is a good launching off point to talk broadly about what the merge means for validators in light of tornado cash sanctions, which mean that validators might have to stop proposing or attesting to blocks, so adding transactions to the Ethereum ledger that are sanctioned by OFAC. The merge was supposed to be a really exciting time, but for validators, but because of obviously the bear market and then this broader regulatory context, it actually hasn't been quite as cheery as one might expect.
Yeah, this is a really interesting story I'll take another angle. I think the merge angle is also important here, but just looking at how employees are being handled during terminations going into a bear market, we all know like it's tech, right? So in tech, there's up cycles and there's down cycles. People get washed out. Like that's not going to change. It's just the nature of working in the tech industry and working at tech startups. Crypto tends to be on that farther out edge as well, right? Because it's tied to tokens, tied to the prices of tokens, tied to interest from retail. And those whips are really, really strong. And so we see a lot of people get washed out quickly. They might have been at the company for a few months and they're gone. They might have been there for quite a while. It doesn't matter. The executives at the company have to make a decision and get rid of folks. In this case, some solid reporting from you, Sam. I'm curious how you found out about this information, but it looks like the people at Stakefish were given the notice in a very odd manner, where they found out like before they were going to be fired. They found out from the wrong people, and a lot of these people didn't feel like they should have been let go in the first place, and led to some resignations. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on that side of the story.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you were talking about these heavy whips that people are feeling, from bull market to bear market, specifically in crypto. So I won't get into exactly how I heard about the entire story, but you alluded to the fact, and I have something in here about one of the employees who was laid off was one of the top leadership there, Dan Huang. He was tipped off by one of his direct reports named Dimi. Dimi was supposed to replace Dan, thought that the whole thing was BS, told Dan, hey, you're getting laid off, and then laid himself off. He ended up resigning from the company just because he thought things were so poorly handled. The fact that things were being spread by rumors to employees. Some employees, I have something here. There's a bunch of Slack messages quoted. Somebody said, quote, as of today on the Slack channel, as of today, one member of the marketing team has still not been contacted by anyone that they're to be fired tomorrow. So it just was handled poorly all around. So yes, there is that side of things, but then there's this other broader context that I want to get into. You mentioned F2 Pool by accident at the beginning, their sister company, but it's actually been a little bit of a rough patch, if you want to call it that, for F2 Pool. The Bitcoin miners, they used to be Ethereum miners. There's this really interesting study that came out from Hebrew University last week that some folks might have seen. I'm not sure if we reported on it in CoinDesk, but basically, they did something called, they're calling it a bandit attack, they being the Hebrew University folks, where they were changing the times on blocks in order to win more blocks than other similarly resourced miners. They being F2 Pool was doing this. And there's this big, controversy on now it's irrelevant because Ethereum mining isn't a thing, but there's this big controversy around whether this was a quote unquote attack on the consensus level of Ethereum, or whether it was just smart business to do this strategy for 2 years that nobody else knew about, that, ended up letting them win more blocks than others. I don't know. Sorry to go on a big ramble there, but really interesting couple of companies to focus on right now.
We love big rambles on this show. I wanted to pick it up from Will where you left off. The story paints this picture of like a really unorganized and toxic work environment. There's a quote in there from the CEO and founder, Chun Wang. He said, "It's normal in a bear market to reduce team size and optimize costs. Only non-tech positions are laid off. We're still working hard to hire more developers and DevOps." And I just think this whole thing just like tells a story again about a leader who in some ways may be out of touch, because we've seen companies who have prepared properly for the bear market, who have not had to lay off people during this bear market. And I hear leaders in this industry, and it's not just the CEO, there are so many others who say, it's time to build, we're only hiring developers. I feel like they're forgetting about all of the other parts that make a functioning company. Like when your developers leave, you need people working in HR to renegotiate or to hire more developers. If there is a hack because of a bug, you need someone in PR or comms to manage that crisis. If there's new regulation passed down, you need someone to re-strategize your business. And so I just think when we hear CEOs say things like this, it just shows like unpreparedness and out of touchness, and I don't like it. There's my big rant.
I don't like it either. No, but I think you're hitting on some important points here. One thing that was interesting in the story was they decided to make this layoff on the day of the merge, September 15th. And whether that was coincidence because the merge was sort of like a moving target, we didn't quite know when it was going to happen, or if it was chosen, doesn't really matter, right? Because it happened on the day that was pretty important not only for crypto, but for a company like Stakefish, which was built around the merge actually happening. Like imagine working at a company and you're running with everybody for 2+ years to develop a product. And then the day that you get there, they axe you, right? The day that you get to the finish line, you just get chopped off. And so it's just unfortunate. I think it leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, which led to some of the resignations here. To your comment, Jen, like I do think there is some difficulty here, right? Like a lot of these founders are first times, or they haven't had to let people go before. And I think it's pretty easy to mishandle this information or to trust the wrong people at your company. And before you know it, like the information gets out incorrectly. It's not handled as you want it to be handled, and things slip out of control. People are really tough to work with, and I think you find that out in some of these more human stories. Sam, throw it over to you for last thoughts.
Yeah, so just two things. So on the, on this specific story, this CEO, Chun Wang, like I said, he was the co-founder of F2 Pool. He's actually done this before. I didn't include it in this story because I wasn't able to get enough on the record to make it interesting. But there have been big layoffs at this company before. He's, I think, a billionaire. He's, been at this for a little while, which makes this all the more, galling. That's on one side. But the other thing, you mentioned, which I think is important here, it wasn't only layoffs. There were also resignations. One of the resignations was from somebody who was supposed to, according to many employees, at a certain point become the CEO of this company. Maybe that wasn't the case by the time this resignation happened. But anyway, that's a big loss. But some of the other folks who resigned, they cited ideological differences between themselves and Stakefish, this validator. And I think this gets to a larger point that I think bears focusing on moving forward past the merge. And as crypto writ large, matures, which is you have employees of these companies who have that kind of, whether it's libertarian or rebellious or whatever it is, they have this sort of ideological bent to them that drew them to the space. But then you have these much more, operationally focused, profit focused CEOs running these companies, and whether the ideology comes to a head with the what is needed to make money at these operations will become more and more interesting, and maybe we'll see more resignations as time goes on, not only at Stakefish but beyond.